Discover how a shoeless girl wowed a millionaire CEO among 25 candidates at S. Inspiring. Emma stood at the entrance of the sleek, glass-walled office building, her bare feet pressing against the cold tile floor. The sun's glow cast long shadows, illuminating the polished shoes of the other candidates who milled around her, each dressed to the nines with carefully curated, designer outfits, embodying the privilege that had eluded her all her life. She felt acutely aware of her frayed denim jeans and the faded t-shirt that had survived countless laundry cycles. With every second that ticked by, her heart raced, not simply from the usual pre-interview nerves, but from the monumental weight of her family's sacrifices resting on her shoulders. Their hopes were wrapped tightly around her dreams like a well-worn scarf, and in this world of ambition, that scarf felt heavy and suffocating. As she walked deeper into the vibrant office, glances shot her way. The polished candidates exchanged looks, a fleeting mix of curiosity and judgment. Emma's mind churned with memories of late nights taking care of her grandmother when her parents worked double shifts. She remembered the relentless cycle of school, studying, and juggling two part-time jobs. All the while, her motivation surged from that genuine sense of duty to honor her family's struggles. Yet here, she felt small, overwhelmed by the stark divide, their polished shoes like armor against her vulnerability. An announcement boomed from the front of the room. The challenge commenced, and the candidates scattered. Emma fought against her mounting unease. One of the leading tech firms was hosting a crisis simulation that would test their skills and agility. Glancing around, she noticed what others often dismissed during such pressures, the vulnerability of her fellow competitors. The energy around her shifted as a major project pitch went awry, revealing fault lines among the candidates. Fear had seeped into their manicured exteriors, igniting defensiveness. Before Emma could fully process the escalating chaos, an instinctive determination swelled within her. This wasn't a moment to weaken, it was time to rally. We can do this together. She raised her voice, gaining the attention of her peers. In a room filled with competing ambition, she invited collaboration rather than hostility. As she orchestrated a plan, something changed. The tension became electric, transforming competition into practical teamwork. Mr. Harris, observing silently from the background, began to shift his perspective about what truly defined merit, but just as the team dynamic surged, Emma's phone vibrated in her pocket, jolting her. The notification blinked menacingly, a lucrative internship offer from a rival company without the same ethical considerations as the one she aspired to join. Anxiety gripped her heart, another layer of pressure stacking higher. Would her need for financial stability drive her away from her principles? What about her parents and the sacrifices they made for her? That conflict thrummed through her, tightening around her throat. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. The final challenge loomed closer, every second amplifying her internal war. She looked at her fellow candidates. Some had come to rely on her, forming bonds over shared ambitions. Others eyed her with distrust. The choice wasn't merely about a job, it was a crossroads of integrity and ambition. Was she destined to prioritize wealth over values? Would embracing a path of immediate success betray her parents' sacrifices? Emma stood on the precipice of a decision that could not only shape her future but also reshape Mr. Harris's understanding of what truly defined success. The moment hung heavy in the air, promising the storm of choices that lay ahead. Emma took a deep breath as the reality of her dilemma crystallized. She felt the tangible pulse of opportunity against the suffocating weight of expectation. The candidates around her buzzed with nervous energy, an unsettling reflection of her own internal struggle. Her eyes locked onto Mr. Harris, his expression inscrutable. This was a man who had the power to change her life, yet she sensed that he was watching not just to evaluate her skills, but to understand her character. driven by a newfound boldness, Emma turned her attention back to the unfolding scenario, the crisis simulation. As the loud chaos contorted into disarray, she began to compartmentalize her thoughts, creating a mental framework to tackle the project. Each decision held weight, and every choice had implications not just for her career but also for her sense of self. She needed to channel this pressure into something productive, not just for her own benefit but for the candidates who had rallied around her. "All right," she began, voice steady despite the tremors of uncertainty within. "We need to identify the root issues that led to this strain." She organized the group into pairs, assigning clear tasks to ensure everyone contributed. "Let us focus on our strengths and use them to bridge the gaps." As the candidates fell into rhythm, Emma perceived a distinct shift in their demeanor, something that eliminated the competitive airs in favor of genuine collaboration. They were no longer just rivals, together they formed a working unit. It was too long before some members began to vocalize their insecurities, revealing cracks beneath their polished exteriors. Emotional intelligence surged as fingers tapped away at keyboards, ideas flowing like an invigorating breeze. In this space, Emma's mind began to stretch. She realized she was performing much better than she ever imagined. Her instincts were sharp, her contributions thoughtful. Every suggestion made the group stronger, shifting her perception of her own worth. She was discovering a hidden agility within herself, a capacity for leadership that was instinctive rather than learnt. However, every tick of the clock dragged her back to the dark notification, a siren pull from the rival company that dangled an alluring promise of immediate financial relief. Each moment she expended in this simulation ignited a spark of hope, yet crystallized her fear of falling behind in the relentless race for stability. The dichotomy between her values and her ambitions consumed her, each choice a tightrope act teetering between principle and survival. As the simulation reached a critical climax, Emma felt the intensity heighten. "Let us prepare a concise presentation," she urged her team. "We need a solution that not only navigates the crisis but also prioritizes ethical implications. This not only displays our capability but positions us as forward-thinking professionals." Eyes widened with understanding, her fellow candidates moved with urgency. The collective passion surged, a narrative unraveling with every keystroke and idea exchanged. Emma had cultivated an environment that honed not only their individual talents but the essence of their shared journey towards something greater than themselves. Amidst the frenzy, Emma caught a glimpse of Mr. Harris, leaning against the wall, a hint of admiration in his gaze. This was a pivotal moment, and she could feel the tension coiling. She was soaring over the precipice, heart racing not just from fear but exhilaration as well. Would she take the next leap toward claiming her own values, or would she inevitably succumb to the seductive promise of a safer route toward her career? The presentation loomed, an impending culmination of what they had achieved together. Would it affirm her newfound sense of self and merit, or would it lead her closer to a choice that could shatter her integrity? One thing was certain: the next steps she would take would define her not just in the eyes of others, but in her own. Emma squared her shoulders, feeling the weight of 1,000 decisions surrounding her. The moment had arrived, but the true test was still ahead. She readied herself for the defining question that would shape everything from this point on: who am I willing to become? The room stilled when Emma stood up to present. Time felt suspended in that intimate bubble, where the air thickened with anticipation. Each candidate had contributed to the presentation, but this moment now belonged to her. It was a moment that threatened to anchor her perception of success, yet the weight of expectation was blurred by her resolve to maintain authenticity. Taking a breath, she glanced at her notes. They were filled with facts and figures, but they paled in comparison to the enthusiasm shared by her team. "Good morning, everyone," she began, her voice steady, yet flowing with an undercurrent that signified both urgency and passion. "Today, we present our findings on the crisis simulation, addressing not just the issues at hand, but also the core values we represent as professionals." As she articulated the problem, Emma felt a shift within herself, a release of fear. Words poured from her as if a dam had broken. She spoke not only of facts, but of the collaborative spirit that had emerged. "We recognize that in crises, it is easy to lose sight of integrity. The solutions we propose not only resolve the immediate challenges but set a precedent of ethical responsibility. Our commitment transcends mere compliance, it is about fostering trust and innovation. The flicker of doubt that had taunted her receded, replaced by an undeniable confidence. She knew now that her individual insights mattered. While the thought of her financially secure alternative lingered at the fringes of her mind, it paled in the wake of her awakening sense of purpose. In articulating her values to the room, she felt aligned with something greater, her mission to forge a meaningful career grounded in integrity. But just as triumph began to wash over her, a familiar face in the audience snapped her back. Jealousy flickered in the eyes of a rival candidate who had long believed Emma to be an inconsequential underdog. Their engagement with the audience clashed starkly, creating tension that refused to dissipate. The subtle shake of the competitor's head triggered a realization: Emma was no longer simply trying to secure a spot. She was standing for something far more substantial: her identity, her commitment, and her drive to prove her worthiness. Before we conclude, she continued, channeling her inner strength, let us examine the impact of our proposed strategies. Each decision we make today reverberates beyond this room, it shapes not only our reputations but the future of the industry we aspire to lead. The fervor in her voice drew the audience's attention, cementing her presence. As she reached the final slide, she paused deliberately, allowing the anticipation to settle. This is not just about what we can win as individuals, it is about what we collectively can achieve by fostering an ethical ethos, she concluded, her heart pounding and eyes scanning the faces before her. When the applause broke out, the emotional swell engulfed her, affirmation showered over her efforts, yet a lingering question haunted her. Was this merely a stepping stone toward securing her position, or had she just unlocked a deeper narrative about what her career could symbolize? Mr. Harris approached her, an enigmatic smile playing at the corners of his mouth. You challenged not just the status quo, Emma, you opened a door to personal authenticity. But do you truly understand the stakes? With adrenaline still coursing through her, Emma realized that this was her own moment of reckoning. The chance to define her values in a world often driven by competition and ambition felt like a call to arms. But the weight of this truth brought with it an unsettling dread. If this was just the beginning, what further tests awaited her as she navigated the transition between corporate allure and personal integrity? Emma locked eyes with Mr. Harris, feeling the gravity behind his words. I want to, she breathed, determination settling in her chest, yet she knew the journey was fraught with choices that would continually challenge her sense of self. As the tension lingered, Emma felt the realization that she stood on the brink of an even greater challenge. Who was she prepared to confront next to truly own her future? The following days were a whirlwind. Emma found herself cycling through a blend of exhilaration and internal conflict. The presentation had garnered positive feedback, and while her confidence grew, so too did the expectations placed upon her. It was a double-edged sword. She was proud of what they had achieved collectively, yet the looming prospect of possible defeat made her stomach churn. Determined to harness her momentum, Emma began to strategize, seeking ways not only to further her personal goals but also to cultivate an environment of authenticity within her team. Late nights were spent poring over industry literature, dissecting successful models of ethical leadership, and brainstorming innovative practices that upheld integrity. She wanted her next steps to be rooted in conviction, not merely ambition. However, as clarity emerged about her direction, shadows of doubt crept back in. Her rival, Sandra, loomed large in her subconscious. Their contentious rivalry effectively painted a target on her back. Sandra was driven to succeed at any cost, with a penchant for undermining her competition. The thought of facing her during the next stages of the selection process sent a ripple of anxiety through Emma. When Emma entered the office the following week for a pre-meeting with her team, she misstepped into a conversation already in progress. A few colleagues were discussing the competitiveness of the selection and how vital appearances could be. You have to look the part, one teammate noted, gesturing toward Sandra's polished exterior. Emma's stomach nodded, a sense of inadequacy washed over her like an unwelcome tide. Who cares about appearances when our ideas are strong? She rebutted, although the conviction in her voice felt shaky. Yes, but we live in a world that often judges books by their covers, another colleague chimed in. The discussion wrapped around her like barbed wire, injecting sharp reminders that projection mattered. As the meeting commenced, Emma shifted in her chair, unable to shake feeling out of place, like a shoe without its mate. After a productive discussion, Emma found an opportunity in an upcoming networking event meant to connect candidates with industry leaders. It was a chance to flex her newfound dedication to authenticity. If she could make a credible impression, it would overshadow appearances. Excitement thrummed through her. This was her moment to define herself on her terms. Yet the fear of Sandra's undermining tactics haunted her. How deeply could she align her representation without sacrificing her individuality? The day of the networking event arrived, and with it, flutters of anxiety danced in her stomach. She had rejected the urge to conform to typical dress norms, opting for a smart yet comfortable outfit that truly reflected her essence. Standing in front of the mirror, she questioned the decisions she had made to assert her identity. What will they think? Will they see the value? She mused, holding her breath against judgment. As she arrived, the chatter swirled around her, an electric buzz of competing ambitions. Emma's pulse quickened in response to the energy. Among the group of candidates, she spotted Sandra, exuding poise, a stark contrast to Emma's self-doubt. But she steeled herself, reminding her that she was no longer merely an underdog. As the event unfolded, Emma focused on connecting with others, bypassing the tension Sandra radiated. She engaged sincerely with industry veterans, articulating her vision and eliciting genuine interest. Each interaction ignited her passion further, empowering her approach. But the lingering presence of her rival set the stage for confrontation. She was bound to encounter Sandra soon. The question was when, and at what cost. With every word shared, uncertainties morphed into tangible strategies. She could interrupt old patterns, and carve a space where she could thrive. Just as Emma felt the atmosphere begin to shift in her favor, she turned to find Sandra approaching her, a predatory smile illuminating her face. Quite the spirited performance, Sandra said, her tone veiled yet biting. Emma met her gaze, forcing a smile that felt both defiant and uncertain. The time had come to face her head-on, and Emma could feel the stakes rising with palpable tension. Would she collapse under the pressure, or would she wield her newfound strength to confront the voice of her fiercest competition? Emma straightened her shoulders, feeling the warmth of resentment bloom in her chest as she contended with Sandra's simmering condescension. "Thanks, Sandra. I take that as a compliment," she replied, steeling her voice against the layers of irony. Just as a wave threatens to engulf, she was determined to surf over it instead. "I couldn't help but notice how you're choosing to present yourself." "Very unconventional," Sandra replied, tilting her head slightly. The air crackled, the barb was clear. Emma detected a weakness in her tone, a desperation to provoke a response, and it sparked something deep within her. "Perhaps it's time to redefine what conventional looks like," Emma countered, her heart racing. She felt buoyed by the challenge, her earlier apprehension giving way to something more potent. "Authenticity is what resonates with the kind of leaders we want to attract, don't you think?" Sandra's smile faltered, revealing just a hint of surprise. "Touché," she said, and the challenge hung in the air uncomfortably. Emma felt a rush of adrenaline. She had swung back and made an impact, however small. Before she could relish her boldness, they were interrupted by a prominent CEO emerging from a conversation nearby. The man was known for his progressive mindset, someone Emma had admired from afar. He began to address the candidates, drawing all eyes toward him, and Emma seized the moment. As the crowd settled, she listened intently to his views on innovation and integrity. The words ignited a fire within her. She wanted to contribute, to extend the conversation back towards the essence of ethical leadership she had been cultivating in her mind. When the opportunity arose for questions, Emma raised her hand confidently. "How do you encourage your team members to maintain their authentic selves while also pushing for innovation?" she inquired, her voice clear and unwavering. She could feel a mix of curiosity and respect ripple through the audience, including Sandra, who was momentarily caught off guard. The CEO's response was thoughtful, and Emma noted every word, mentally weaving them into her principles for success. As he spoke about creating an environment where people felt free to share their true selves, she felt herself nodding vigorously, inspiration coursing through her. afterward, she took a breath and shared her own thoughts, blending her vision for authenticity with the CEO's insights. The connection felt electric. Her previous fears about appearances dissipated. She was conveying substance over superficiality, and it resonated deeply with those around her. When the session concluded, several people, including other candidates, approached her with nods of appreciation, asking further questions about her approach. It was exhilarating, affirming, and somehow a stark contrast to the tension just moments before. It reinforced a new belief: she no longer needed to wear her self-doubt like an anchor. As she glanced over at Sandra, who appeared flustered by the shift in atmosphere, Emma felt a flicker of triumph. It was not about the rivalry but rather owning her narrative. What had initially been anxiety over her presence became clarity. She could navigate challenges on her terms, but the evening was not over. As she reflected on her performance, a card slipped into her hands, a direct invitation from the CEO to discuss potential collaborations in detail. Emma's breath hitched. This was the opportunity she had been seeking, but it also intensified her sense of urgency and commitment to represent herself genuinely. "See you at the top, Emma," Sandra re-entered, feigning geniality but slinking away with a hint of defeat. Emma's heart raced as she took in the implications of the CEO's invitation, weighing the risk of pursuing this uncharted territory. Would her willingness to step fiercely into her authenticity lead her to a breakthrough or isolate her further against the odds? Taking a deep breath, she winked at Sandra, then turned away to reflect on her journey thus far. One question surged to the forefront: would she summon the courage to step into the next stage of her career with the same authenticity she had just begun to embrace? The stakes were rising, but the real test was only beginning. Emma clutched the CEO's card as if it were made of gold, her heart pounding with both exhilaration and trepidation. The invitation represented not only an opportunity to forge a professional connection but also a crucial moment of decision. Stepping into the room where she might have a conversation with a leader she admired, she felt the weight of her insecurities shift. Instead of doubts looming overhead, her purpose flickered in her mind like a guiding star. She returned to her small apartment that evening, the quiet pressing in on her. The soft glow of her study lamp illuminated piles of notes and articles on ethical leadership she had been compiling. They represented her journey, a quest for truthfulness in a world often overshadowed by facade. Rather than retreat into uncertainty, she opened her laptop, eager to research the CEO further and dive deeper into her vision. Fueled by caffeine and determination, Emma poured her thoughts into a draft outline for their upcoming meeting. What direction should she steer the discussion? What unique perspective could she bring to his world? The answers were not immediate, but she knew she was harnessing something powerful. The experience of the evening was now morphing into clarity about her aspirations. Hours later, she closed her laptop, a sense of satisfaction washing over her. She was preparing to own the narrative of her career instead of merely reacting to the paths laid out for her. Each phrase she crafted embodied authenticity. Listening to Sandra's scoffing remarks earlier in the day no longer touched her. Instead, she felt empathy for someone still confined by conventional expectations. Determined not to let her vision be sidelined, Emma set a mock interview with herself in the mirror, the reflective surface repurposed as her stage. "What do you want to achieve?" she asked, envisioning the CEO's presence. "I want to create a workplace where innovation thrives alongside authenticity," she affirmed confidently. The simplicity of her answer struck her. It felt right, a resonance that echoed deep within. As the meeting day approached, she noticed changes in herself. A recent tremor of self-doubt began to relinquish its grip. The more she honored her true self, the more vital she felt. In clear moments, she would catch glimpses of unfeigned enthusiasm in her eyes, reflecting a growing passion she had long concealed beneath layers of expectation. Yet with every moment of growth, shadows of anxiety lingered. The specter of competition whispered reminders of her inadequacies. Would she ever match up to the polished candidates surrounding her? The fear brewed just below the surface, and each thought hit harder than the last. How had she decided to put her unguarded self out there when the stakes felt so high? The night before the meeting, Emma found herself unable to sleep, her mind racing. In the stillness, she confronted her greatest fear that authenticity might not be enough. The idea of failure loomed, potent and paralyzing. However, as she grappled with those thoughts, something else emerged, a realization that failure was not a mark of inadequacy but a stepping stone on her path. This shift unlocked a fortitude she had not realized she possessed. The morning light dawned brighter than she expected, illuminating her resolve. She chose her outfit carefully, embracing elements that highlighted her personality while still remaining professional. For the first time, she felt like not just a number in the room but someone with a voice that deserved to be heard. As she stepped into the building where the meeting would take place, a whirlpool of emotions surged within her, a blend of fear, eagerness, and fierce determination. No longer a mere participant relegated to the sidelines, this was her moment to engage. With every stride down the corridor, Emma knew she was moving closer not just to an opportunity, but to a pivotal revelation. What awaited her on the other side of that door? Would she seize the moment and reveal the passion behind her journey, or revert to the shadows of self-doubt? The answers hovered just out of reach, enough to leave her with an invigorating sense of anticipation as she approached the conference room. As Emma stood outside the conference room, she took a deep breath, reminding herself to embrace the moment rather than resist it. The door was slightly ajar, and she could hear the low hum of conversation inside, mingling with the clatter of chairs and the rustle of papers. For a brief moment, she considered turning back, suddenly gripped by the terror that had haunted her the night before. However, the vision she had cultivated, of fostering a workplace that championed authenticity, propelled her forward. She stepped through the doorway, the bright lights of the room illuminating a long table surrounded by sharp-suited executives. As she scanned the faces, she found the CEO David Sinclair seated at the head, exuding an air of calm authority. Though the room buzzed with the energy of her fellow candidates, she focused on him, centering her thoughts on the connection she sought to establish. Emma Johnson, she introduced herself, her voice steadier than she anticipated. Shaking David's hand, she felt a spark pass between them, a mutual recognition that stirred her spirit. The mere acknowledgement of her existence validated the efforts she had put into this moment. The initial tension began to dissipate as she sat down, allowing her genuine enthusiasm to replace anxiety. The interview commenced, and the panel's questions flowed like a stream. Emma responded with a confidence that surprised her, articulating her vision and values with clarity. Each time they probed deeper into her philosophy about leadership, she leaned into her truth, weaving anecdotes from her own experiences into her answers. The more she spoke, the less she seemed like an imposter. Instead, she felt like an agent of change, a genuine candidate whose voice carried weight. As the discussion shifted to challenges in the workplace, one executive asked a question that struck at the very heart of Emma's journey. How do you plan to implement your ideals in an environment that often prioritizes results over ethics? In that moment, she realized this was the crucible she had been preparing for. Instead of retreating into cautious philosophical terms, she shared a story about a project from her previous job, where prioritizing ethical practices had not only encouraged open dialogue but also fostered unprecedented creativity. She could see the panel leaning in, the gears in their minds turning. Yet, amid her rising confidence, a flicker of doubt emerged. What if they saw through her, peeling back the layers to reveal her insecurities? She swiftly crushed the thought, reminding herself that her truth had the power to inspire. As the interview progressed, David asked about a time she had to confront failure. Immediately, Emma's mind raced to moments of vulnerability, episodes she had previously deemed as weaknesses. But now, they were pivotal learning experiences, each serving to redirect her path. She articulated how those experiences shaped her resilience, allowing her to emerge more capable than before. Their eyes sparkled with interest, and she took a risk by asking David about his greatest failures. His reply resounded in the room, a powerful reminder that imperfection is inherently human. Their exchange opened a door to a shared understanding, a connection she yearned for in a professional realm often encased in fear. As the meeting wound down, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something within her had transformed. She had not only communicated what she wanted but had actively participated in a valuable dialogue. The tableau of executives seemed less daunting, they weren't just judges but potential allies in her quest for authenticity. Upon leaving, she felt a rush of adrenaline and clarity washing over her. Each step taken was less about awaiting the verdict and more about redefining who she was, the embodiment of her ideals. The anxious remnants of self-doubt crumbled as she looked out through the glass doors, her heart swelling with both pride and newfound possibility, but as she reached the elevator, her phone buzzed violently against her leg. A notification flashed. An anonymous message simply stating, "Remember, the game is meant to be played with gloves on." Her heartbeat quickened. In that moment, she confronted a chilling realization. Was there more at stake than just her career? Emma pressed the button, her mind racing. She couldn't afford to be naive anymore. The shadows were closing in, and her resolve would soon be tested in unexpected ways. What game had she unwittingly entered? The elevator doors slid shut, encasing Emma in metallic silence. She leaned against the cool wall, her thoughts spiraling through the cryptic message that had just interrupted her triumph. She had come so far, pushed through barriers of self-doubt, and proven her worth. Yet, the words, "gloves on," echoed ominously, urging her to reconsider the world around her. As the elevator descended, Emma's mind oscillated between exhilaration and anxiety. She had felt empowered moments ago, talking candidly with the panel, steering the conversation towards authenticity. But now, the implication embedded in that message pulled her back to harsh reality. It reminded her that this may not just be about getting the job. It was a strategic game, and she had to be prepared for what lay ahead. The doors parted and reality flooded back, the hum of the corporate environment swirling around her. While she stepped into the lobby, she caught sight of her reflection in the tinted glass, standing tall, confident, yet vulnerable. It struck her that this message threatened to undo the progress she had made. The clarity she had just experienced should not be that easily overshadowed. Emma retrieved her phone and stared at the message once more, contemplating its meaning. Was someone genuinely warning her, or was this a tactic to manipulate her fear? The anonymous nature of it incited both paranoia and motivation. She needed to reclaim her narrative, to fortify herself against both external and internal threats. The stakes felt higher than the interview itself. Her journey for authenticity now intertwined with an unseen adversary. Determined to decode this challenge, Emma decided to take proactive steps. She tapped into her network, reaching out to trusted colleagues and mentors. With each message she sent, she felt the weight of isolation lift slightly. Perhaps there was safety in numbers, and sharing her concerns might unveil more. Throughout the evening, her conversation turned from the formalities of the job to discussing resilience and navigating the uncertainty of corporate politics. One mentor advised, "Challenges reveal character, Emma. Stay true to your principles, but also recognize the chessboard you're playing on." His words were a dual-edged sword, reminding her of the necessity to be strategic while staying authentic. As she navigated the complexities of her thoughts, Emma suddenly realized she had an arsenal of skills at her disposal. The countless workshops she attended on leadership, conflict resolution, and emotional intelligence had equipped her with insights about interpersonal dynamics. She could apply these in her current situation, turning her connections into conduits of support while also crafting a strategy to approach further challenges head-on. The evening wearied her, but instead of retreating into fatigue, Emma felt invigorated. She chose to view this looming uncertainty as an opportunity for growth. She meticulously mapped out a plan, listing key individuals she could rely on, as well as strategies for maintaining her integrity while navigating potential treachery. As the night deepened, she reviewed notes from her interview, gleaning every insight she had missed during the initial rush of adrenaline. What were the soft signals and unspoken cues during the dialogue with the panel? What had they hesitated over, and what could she infer about them? Learning these nuances could provide leverage. Prepared to meet the challenge head-on, Emma finally turned off her phone and exhaled, allowing herself a moment of peace. She understood that her path was laden with obstacles but also that her journey had only just begun. The world was vast, complex, and rich with opportunities to connect, evolve, and claim her space. As she nestled into bed, a final thought crossed her mind: the stakes had indeed changed. She was no longer just a hopeful candidate, she was now a player in an intricate game of ambition. And as uncertainties loomed large, she couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere, tension was brewing, a confrontation was on the horizon. One that would define not just her career, but her very being. What revelations would soon surface in this evolving dynamic? The next morning arrived with a sharpness that cut through Emma's lingering fatigue. Sunlight streamed through her window, illuminating the notebook sprawled across her desk, its pages filled with ideas and strategies. As she flipped through the notes, each scribble felt like a lifeline, reminders of her purpose amid uncertainty. The plan she had outlined wasn't merely a safeguard, it was a testament to her readiness to engage head-on with whatever challenges awaited her. Dressing for the day, she stood before the mirror, taking a moment to confront her reflection. Today was unique. It was an opportunity not just to pursue a job, but to assert her identity in a landscape where authenticity felt like a gamble. The words "gloves on" haunted her still, but she allowed them to fuel her resolve instead of her fear. She discerned that she didn't need to mask her authenticity, she could wield it as a weapon. Arriving at the office, the typical buzz of corporate life filled her with both trepidation and excitement. She maneuvered past colleagues with affable nods, each interaction a test of her newfound confidence. She was determined to uncover insights that could direct her course. As she parked herself in a cafe nook overlooking the bustling streets, she opened a new conversation with a coworker, someone she had always admired. "How do you navigate the complexities when you feel the ground is shifting beneath you?" she asked, her voice steady but probing. The colleague paused, considering her words. "You redefine the ground itself. Change the narrative. People are watching. When you act from a place of authenticity, they either align with you or reveal their true selves," he replied, his gaze thoughtful. Emma felt empowered by the insight, her mind racing with possibilities. It was no longer just about reading the room, it was about creating a space for herself. She envisioned how she could take charge, integrating her vision with the existing structure, turning her concerns into collaborative opportunities that would bolster her standing. After her conversation, Emma encountered an unforeseen challenge. One of the candidates from her interview, a well-regarded contender known for his sharp strategy skills, cornered her in the break room. He wore an air of arrogance, and his presence immediately tangled the atmosphere. "I heard you're making quite the impression, Emma," he said, a smirk dancing on his lips. "Tell me, how do you handle the pressure of being one of the underdogs here?" Internally, Emma felt a surge of irritation but carried herself with grace. "Underdogs often bring fresh perspectives," she countered, leaning against the counter with her arms crossed. "What they lack in traditional experience, they often make up for with creativity and adaptability." His smirk faltered momentarily, the tension in the room thickening. Emma seized the moment. "What about you? How do you deal with the pressure of always needing to be the best? Doesn't that sound exhausting?" He blinked, thrown off balance, and for a brief second, she witnessed vulnerability pierce his facade. The encounter shook something loose within her, igniting a spark of newfound respect for her own agency in the process. Feeling a wave of adrenaline, Emma realized she had more to gain from this game than just a job offer. This was about self-recognition. She was no longer simply reactive to the winds of corporate politics, she was learning how to steer her narrative and adapt with agility. As she returned to her desk, her resolve solidified. Each challenge, each conversation, was a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block, a means to redefine her path with courage. But what would the stakes turn into when the true game began? The thought lingered, a palpable weight, a whisper that a deeper confrontation awaited her. What would she discover about the underlying motivations of the players around her, and how would it shape her next moves? Emma emerged stronger than she ever imagined possible. With the networking event and interview behind her, she reflected on her journey. The doubts that had shadowed her were gradually replaced by a profound confidence rising within. Each experience had fortified her commitment to pursuing a career enveloped in authenticity while remaining true to her values. Days turned into weeks as she transitioned from hopeful candidate to influential team member. The atmosphere around her shifted as she engaged with colleagues, fostering a workspace not just for collaboration but a model for ethical leadership. Emma harnessed her insights from that transformative interview, instilling the belief that integrity could coexist with ambition, generating inspiring conversations that rippled throughout the office. One afternoon, Ms. Bennett, the department director, approached Emma with a glint of respect in her eye. "I've watched your progress, Emma," she noted. "You have a vision the company desperately needs. How would you feel about leading our next team initiative?" A wave of validation washed over Emma, overwhelming her with gratitude. "I would love that," she replied, her conviction unwavering. Stepping into the role of project lead, Emma faced the challenge head-on. Collaborating with her diverse team, she crafted a landmark proposal that championed innovation while integrating ethical practices at its core. Her clear vision was met with enthusiasm as her colleagues rallied around a shared mission. This was no longer about competition, it was about collective growth. In the ensuing meetings, Emma approached each discussion with confidence. She proved not only to her peers but also to herself that she belonged at that table. The initial fears and insecurities from her first days at the office melted away as she articulated her thoughts with precision, backed by research and supported by her professional journey. The team delivered presentations not just based on data but infused with the essence of their newly formed ethos, innovation anchored in integrity. As the project milestones rolled out, the acknowledgement from leadership grew. Emma was invited to present their findings to the executive board. Standing before the polished executives, she felt a spark ignite within her, not the crippling fear of judgment, but an undeniable power to influence change. "Our approach integrates evidence-based practices while emphasizing our core values, transparency and accountability," she asserted, bolstered by the inspiration of her experiences and the camaraderie earned through struggles. When the applause reached its crescendo, it echoed a sentiment so deeply ingrained in her heart: she had proven herself. She had transformed from the overlooked candidate in frayed jeans to a leader steering projects that merged ambition with ethics. After the presentation, she cornered Mr. Harris, her former observer, and the man who had propelled her into this journey of self-discovery. "Emma, your presentation today demonstrated a level of insight and authority that many here aspire to achieve," he noted, his tone sincere. The weight of his words settled warmly, weaving into her narrative of success. As Emma concluded her project, she noticed that the shadows of her rivals had become less menacing. Even Sandra, once the embodiment of corporate gauntlet pressure, now greeted Emma with a begrudging respect. "You've come a long way, haven't you?" she remarked one day during lunch, an admiration quietly buried beneath competitive undertones. Reaching a milestone marked by recognition and respect felt surreal. Emma had kicked down walls of self-doubt, building a bridge over the tumultuous waters of ambition infused with values. Each success triggered a newfound appreciation for the journey she undertook. She recognized that the triumph lay not merely in victory, but in her evolution, her unwavering commitment to integrity and innovation. In the quiet moments that followed her achievements, Emma visited her grandmother's grave, an anchor to her past, and whispered, "I did it. You believed in me." It was as if the very ground beneath her told her she had not just inherited their struggle, she had etched a legacy of perseverance and authenticity. With her newfound role solidified, Emma embraced the next chapter of her career with open arms. She no longer walked barefoot into competition feeling small, she tread confidently on her own path, a trail marked by integrity and a profound sense of purpose. In that pivotal moment, she no longer just asked, "Who am I willing to become?" Instead, she became the embodiment of the answer, a leader, a vision, and a champion of ethical progress in the corporate landscape. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, comment your reactions and theories about the ending, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.